Morbid Facts, Part 811. In 2014, 23-year-old Ashley Gabrielle Huff spent nearly a month in jail because a cop mistook dried SpaghettiOs on a spoon in her car for meth. She couldn't afford bond, so she sat in a county cell while her life unraveled, missing her child's birthday, losing her job, and watching everything fall apart over a crusty spoon. When the crime lab finally tested it weeks later, the result was immediate. It wasn't meth at all, just pasta sauce like she said it was. The charges were dropped on the spot long after the damage was done. In 1999, 11-year-old Mikkel Biggs vanished from a quiet neighborhood in Mesa, Arizona while waiting for the ice cream truck. Her younger sister ran inside for less than 2 minutes, and when she came back, Mikkel was gone. All that remained was her bike lying in the street, its front wheels still spinning, and the 2 quarters she'd been holding to buy her treat. Despite massive searches and decades of leads, no trace of Mikkel has ever been found, as her sudden disappearance remains one of Arizona's most haunting mysteries. Morbid Facts, Part 809. In 2010, 77-year-old rancher and hunting expert Don Alejo lived alone on a piece of land near Ciudad Victoria, Mexico, when a local cartel began demanding that he hand over his ranch, a common tactic in the region. They suddenly gave him 24 hours to vacate the property or be killed. Alejo told them he'd think about it, but instead, when the cartel left, he prepared for war. That night, he stayed up fortifying his home. He barricaded doors, moved furniture into firing positions, and set up multiple loaded rifles and shotguns at windows facing all approaches. At dawn, several cartel trucks rolled in expecting an easy takeover, but instead, the gunmen walked straight into a one-man ambush. From inside the house, Don Alejo opened fire with military-level precision. The firefight lasted nearly an hour, and by the time authorities arrived, they found 4 cartel members dead and at least 2 more critically wounded. The house was torn apart by gunfire, and Don Alejo was found inside, killed by return fire, still clutching his shotgun. Mexican Marines who processed the scene later said it was obvious he knew he wouldn't survive. He had prepared it as a final stand. Don Alejo's ranch was never taken by the cartel, and he became a national symbol of defiance in a region where most people are too terrified to fight back. This woman convinced herself she needed human blood to survive the way other people need food. Starting in 1989, Brisbane's Tracy Wigington started killing animals, storing their bodies, and drinking their blood in private feedings before deciding she needed a living human victim. With 3 friends, she lured 47-year-old Edward Baldock into her car and drove him to a riverbank. The moment he stepped out, Wigington ambushed him with a hunting knife so violently that investigators said the wounds were frenzied and his throat was sliced so deep his head was nearly severed. She crouched over him as he died and drank from the blood pouring from the gash in his neck. Detectives later said the scene was so saturated with blood it looked ritualistic, and photos recovered from Wigington showed she'd been staging mock sacrifices with her friends in the months leading up to the murder. When police searched her belongings, they also found jars of preserved animal remains and notebooks describing her goal of becoming a fully transformed vampire. She pleaded guilty and received life in prison, yet still walked free in 2012, leaving one of Australia's most senseless and sadistic murders behind her. Morbid Facts, Part 810. In 2018, Richard Bebo Russell, a 28-year-old Horizon Air ground agent, stunned the aviation world when he quietly climbed into a Bombardier Q400 at Seattle-Tacoma Airport, started the engines from knowledge he'd picked up from YouTube and flight simulators, and took off without a license or clearance. For nearly an hour, he flew over Puget Sound chatting calmly with air traffic control, admitting he was a broken guy while performing a full barrel roll in a 76-seat passenger plane. F-15 fighter jets scrambled to intercept him, but he refused to land, steering the aircraft away from cities before deliberately crashing it into the woods of Ketron Island. The explosion killed only him, scorched acres of forest, and exposed a massive security gap at the airport. In 2014, 43-year-old Chad Olson was reportedly texting his babysitter during movie previews when the man behind him, 71-year-old retired police captain Curtis Reeves, told him to put the phone away. The argument escalated. Olson tossed a handful of popcorn in frustration, and Reeves instantly responded by pulling a handgun and shooting him in the chest. Olson died later that day, while his wife was also injured while trying to block the shot with her hand. Despite witnesses saying Olson never got physical beyond the popcorn, a jury ultimately acquitted Reeves in 2022, accepting his claim that he fired in self-defense under Florida's Stand Your Ground law. Morbid Facts, Part 808. In 2012, Florence Welch of Florence and the Machine nearly died from an undiagnosed ectopic pregnancy, which happens when a fertilized egg implants outside the uterus, usually in a fallopian tube, where it can't grow and can rupture suddenly, causing severe internal bleeding. She went on stage while bleeding internally, thinking it was normal pain, and later learned her fallopian tube had ruptured, leaving what doctors described as a Coke can's worth of blood inside her abdomen. She required emergency surgery to remove the tube and stop the internal bleeding. Florence later said it was the closest she's ever come to dying by far. In 2023, 16-year-old Bryce Brooks from Atlanta jumped into the ocean in Pensacola to save 4 younger kids he'd never met who were being pulled out by a strong rip current. He managed to help get them to safety, but the current dragged him under before he could escape. A family friend, 67-year-old Charles Johnson II, rushed in attempting to save Bryce but was also pulled under. The 4 children survived, but Bryce and Charles didn't make it, and both were later honored as heroes for sacrificing their lives to save others. Morbid Facts, Part 572. Initially known for her ridiculously large implants, German model and actress Martina Bigg says she identifies as black. She's had 23 breast augmentation procedures, as well as numerous perma-tanning treatments to darken her skin, eyebrows, and eye color. The woman says she was baptized as a real African woman while living in Kenya and hopes to build bridges between races. During a camping trip in June of 1969, 6-year-old Dennis Lloyd Martin was last seen hiding behind a bush, planning to jump out and scare his father before he completely vanished. Despite the largest search in Great Smoky Mountains National Park history, no trace of him was ever found. While serial killer Edmund Kemper was serving time in prison, he participated in the Blind Project, a volunteer program where he recorded audiobooks for the visually impaired. Kemper spent over 5,000 hours in the recording booth, as his deep voice was apparently well suited for narration. In 1978, Amos Atkinson held an entire restaurant of 30 people hostage while armed with a shotgun, demanding that his criminal friend be released from prison. But the situation took an unexpected turn when the man's mother stormed the building in her pajamas and hit Atkinson over the head with her handbag while telling him to stop being so stupid. Atkinson then surrendered peacefully. Morbid Facts, Part 221. New York man Simon Metz, aka Schlitzie, was born in 1901 with microcephaly, a condition characterized by a small head and intellectual disability. His parents eventually sold him to a circus and he became a performer in the 1920s, a time when people with disabilities were often exploited for entertainment. It was said Schlitzie had the mental capacity of a 3-year-old. He was unable to care for himself and could only form small words and phrases. Despite these challenges, Schlitzie became a beloved figure among audiences thanks to his innocence and gentle nature. But behind the scenes, Schlitzie was often underpaid, provided with poor living conditions, and seldom fed. Although Schlitzie was born male, the circus often put him in dresses and treated him as a female, promoting him with the names Pinhead and Monkey Girl. In 1936, a chimpanzee trainer adopted Schlitzie as his son and apparently treated him well. But sadly, his adopted father passed away in 1965 and Schlitzie was sent to a mental asylum. Schlitzie died 6 years later at the age of 70 and has since inspired numerous fictional characters including Zippy the Pinhead and Pepper from American Horror Story.